and then we are going to create our another animation here, which is our main window. So let's color code this. Let's make them yellow for our main panel, and let's move forward to here, and let's see how big panel we are going to create. Maybe something around like so. Looks cool for me. Link it to the main track, and let's go with panel page, and we are going to review this at this point, and we are going to use, and let's see what we used here. Again, we are going to use the trim modifier. Don't hate me for using it too much. I'm just going to animate it real quick, 10 frames forward, and bam, we have animation. And let's duplicate this. And by the way, here is a quick tip. Press Alt and click on the icons here, and we are going to toggle between the different modes. So let's fill this with white core and set the opacity to 10% or 20, and we are going to animate this according to our animation. And it's very interesting because we have our trim modifier applied to this layer, but we're going to delete it and bring the rulers, set up some markers, hit Y to grab the pane behind tool and move the anchor point of this layer here, Control R and remove the marker, the rulers, and then we are going to animate the scale of this layer. So let's animate this, and we are going to paste our opacity keyframes here. Oops, let's try again. Yep, and this works great, but let's set it to 20 and apply motion blur for all these layers like so. And for the this gadget, set this to 50% or 75, and for the buttons let's set this to 60. And here is a quick tip how you can make all the interfaces like a bluish core. Let's duplicate it, come to Effect, Generate Fill, and choose a blue core, white blue core. Come to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur, and let's blur it 10 pixels. F4 to toggle the transfer modes, and set this to add, and set the main to 35%. Let's duplicate the layer and set the blurriness to 25 again, duplicate the layer and set it to 75 for example, and you're going to get a nice bluish glow effect. And you can decrease the opacity of these layers according to your needs, and it's not a hard part. I'm sure you can do it your way. Just select the Logos matte layer and expand the mask, and after dropping the logo here, we are going to appear our page. So let's import it. Actually, edited plus page, set this on top and flip it and size it down. like so. Let's see, this is enough. Opacity 25 or 45. Link it to the panel and just copy and paste this animation here. Just set this to, actually we are going to bring the page here, move this frame forward and set it to 0 at the beginning, and copy and paste the opacity keyframes, and let's see, make it 45 in this case. And another thing that we're going to do is to add some flare animations. First of all, I'm going to create a new solid and call it optical flares. Of course you can use Snow White Factory or whatever you want, default lens flares or some other lens flares, but I'm going to use optical flares. I love this plugin. And I need to trim my interface here, and let's come to the preset browser and first choose this preset, and this is our main lens flare. Actually, let's call it main. Set the transfer mode to screen and the scale to maybe 75, and put it right here, and apply blur and sharpen fast blur and set it to horizontal and to 100. And now let's create another solid and call it optical flares. Apply the plugin again and choose another preset. You can create a custom flare, but I like to use the presets for this project. So right here we are going to set the flare to this point and link it to the main track. Apply a circular mask to this layer and feather it like a lot, and animate the brightness. Set this to 0, move 3 frames forward, set it to 100, and move 5 frames forward and set this to 0. Just a cool effect to illustrate that the interface appears. And again, create new layer in our white blue color, and let's call it click. By the way, create it in 300 by 300 size. Double click on the mask tool, duplicate the mask and decrease its size and set it to subtract and feather a lot, like 80 pixels. And we are going to use that to illustrate that we are clicking on the interface. So right here where I click to the button, we want our animation to happen here. Let's drag this to our main track and set the scale to 0, set a keyframe, move 10 frames forward and set this to 100, and hit Shift T to review the opacity, hit J to come back in the beginning, set a keyframe for opacity, hit K and set this to 0. And by the way, J and K move the current time indicator to the keyframes on the selected layer or on the layers in the composition. So that looks great to me. And let's duplicate our optical flares and let's rename this to optical flares. Click and hit U to review the keyframes and move this flare here. It's already tracked in, so there will be no problems, and move the mask accordingly. And I think it's too bright, maybe 75 for brightness, and scale it to 80%. But this is basically the animation we are going for, and the rest of the stuff is easy. Let's see what else we can create, because this is way too long tutorial. Well, I think this is interesting animation and nothing special here or here, but I'm going to create those real quick. So let's create another composition 500 by 500 and let's call it circle. Double click on the shape tool, alt click and just toggle between the modes here. We are going to create a real quick gadget thing. So I know you hate me for this modifier, but it's very useful. Trim paths, and we go and again just going to draw some elements real quick. Maybe increase the length of this one like so, and duplicate it here, make it real tiny and offset it. And then let's create some numbers, open the expressions list and copy and paste this expression here. Just put it right here, increase the font size to 55 or 35 and center it here. 45 looks great. And come to our main composition, let's rename it so it's main. And oh, another thing that we need to do is to track our matte layer to the main track. I forgot to do that, so bam, we are ready. Actually, track it to our main panel and okay, let's set this here and resize it to 25 pixels, 25 units, excuse me, and set this to 45%, and let's just duplicate those elements here and just offset them to look different, and move them to the main panel group and link them here. Another thing we can create is a ellipse, kind of a shape with the shape layer 2, and let's make it white, and let's apply a repeater modifier and set the position to a negative number. Here set the end opacity to 55%, set the number of copies to 15. Okay, set them to 8 and write a quick expression. We go 2 times second with 7 and link this to the main panel. So color code the element and it's moving. Let's select the opacity keyframes animation and apply it to these layers here, and let's rename this, let's call it matter, and paste the opacity keyframes and just offset it. And I think this is the main idea of this. Just need to increase the opacity of those elements. And for the end animation, we are going to animate this panel here. It seems that I don't like it really, and going to turn it off. Just kidding. So this is our page panel. Let's move the anchor point here and let's set keyframes for scale and position and motion blur. Let's turn it on for everything and turn it off for the moment to save some time. And right about here we want this to be 55. Whoops, my mistake. Let's, and this needs to be linked here, so 55%, and move it here. And by the way, link the A that's plus logo to the page panel. That's why we put this logo out of our composition. So here let's link it and see how it looks. Set this to 0 and move it here, and Control Alt K to set the keyframe interpolation, and you need to select a group of keyframes, for example only a position or only a scale keyframes. You can select 2 types of keyframes and set the keyframe interpolation. So this is our animation, and for the main panel you can just select all these elements and pre-compose them to animate this. So let's see what we have here. We have our meters logos. So let's pre-comp that and let's call it main panel and link it to the main track and animate it out. as we are moving it here, we're going to animate the scale and the position again, move a couple of frames forward, set the scale to 0, and actually move the position like so here, and scale it down to 0. Turn on the motion blur and let's see how it looks. It's a bit quick, so we're going to make this smoother, and easy is keyframes, and that's basically our animation. We need to trim some of the elements right here because our track ends there. And finally, let's create a new adjustment layer. Come to effect, and we are going to use some magic bullet looks to color correct our footage. So hit T to review the opacity, set the opacity to 55%, and this will load the interface. It's pretty big here, but let's choose, say, color correction preset. For example, let's choose this one and click OK. And let's create another adjustment layer, set this to screen, set the opacity to 25, and apply effect blur and sharpen fast blur, and set it to 10 pixels to blur the whole scene. And the rest of the stuff are very easy animations based on this type of thing. The 3D grid, it's very easy. Let's create it real quick. Grid, and apply generate grid effect to it. Make it a 3D layer, make it flat, move it like so, and let's link it to our main track. And you can animate the rotation of the grid, and you have a 3D grid which is tracked, and again some strokes and shape layers animated to the disk. And the 3D cube is a very simple element. Let's create it real quick. Make it a 3D layer, hit A to review the anchor point, and let's see from a custom view we moved our anchor point behind our layer. And now let's Control D to duplicate this, and Control D and rotate, Control D, rotate, Control D, and again Control D. Oops. And let's rotate this and come to our active camera, create a new null object, link the elements and animate the rotation. For example, as you can see, and animate the Y rotation here to something like that, and we have this type of animation. And just come to our make comp and set this up, link it to our grid if you want, rotate it and put it here. You can animate it with just a simple scale animation, and that's it for this tutorial. It's long enough, I think, so it's time to save our project and stop here. You can of course add more and more elements. You can add some really small details and basically spend a couple of days to make this shot really believable. But this is just an idea for this video, and there are a lot of tutorials based on this subject, but I thought this would be helpful for people who want to create this type of interface. And by the way, this video is inspired from a music video. Let's find it and show it. Here is the video, as you can see. So you can watch it and create some animations based on this type of floating interface kind of thing. And with that, I hope you liked the tutorial and it was useful for you. Once again, I'm Stefan for ATutsPlus.com and hope you see you next time.